I'm Dan Isenberg. I'm one of the leaders of ScaleUp Milwaukee, which, as you know, is a project to stimulate more and more growth ambition of companies of all sizes, kinds, sectors in the Milwaukee region. It's starting to work. How many of you were at the program yesterday, the finale? One of the, and you were there too, Mark. Raise your hand.
I was there.
I saw you. A term was used called intentional collisions, and part of what ScaleUp Milwaukee does is create intentional collisions around growth. There is a membership drive. Until now, ScaleUp Milwaukee has been funded by the WEDC and other donors, including the generosity of Giacomo and others. And more we want to make this a members organization. And so I'd like to urge all of you to think about becoming members. The ROI of the membership cost on an annual basis is phenomenally high. You just think of any way you want to measure the possibility of if it being worth your while over a 5-year period of time of being in meetings like this and being in meetings like the finale that we had yesterday. It's very high. So please consider that. You're getting an email from Elmer Moore, and you all know Elmer. Brian Schupper, Elizabeth Spates here is the program manager of ScaleUp Milwaukee. The other public service announcement that I have is that we have a Twitter handle. How many of you are following ScaleUp Milwaukee on your Twitter account? So that's not enough. It's at ScaleUp_MCC. I'd like all of you to follow, because part of the process of growth is getting people to talk about growth and have a conversation about growth and infuse the dialogue with growth. If growth happens, such as happens with a lot of the Scalerator companies, and nobody knows about it, it doesn't have as much impact as if you know that your neighbor or the company down the street is. In fact, I heard yesterday a story about one of our Scalerator graduates whose company is growing, and now his wife's got ambition and she's setting up a company saying she learned from her husband. And that's, for me, that's a sign of success. So with no further ado, we keep these Meet the Master conversations intimate, interactive, and short. We'll end at 1/4 of the hour. Let me just give a little bit of very, very, very quick background to Giacomo. I have some slides you haven't seen.
Oh, okay.
But take a look so
I will.
You're aware of what we have. I think
Oh, yeah, that's me.
that's him.
Yeah,
With his 2 brothers and father.
yeah.
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah,
You again, right?
yeah. And you know what? That was Photoshop. That was the 3 of us in Italy sitting on a stump outside my father's home, and we Photoshopped it in front of our restaurant. But go ahead.
So we shouldn't believe everything we see.
Don't believe everything you see, exactly.
Just take a look, and I think we have one of the, there you are, a new member of the Palermo team. Just take a look, and the ones on the left all have the last name Fallucca, if I have it correct.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
And there's a new Fallucca in the world as of last night.
Yeah.
And Giacomo's a grandfather for the first time as of 11:30 last night.
Yeah.
Talk about scaling up.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know you're doing it when someone else does the work.
Yeah.
And that's this, well, I'm sure we'll touch on that. That's just a little bit of background.
Oh, that's nice.
That we can refer to. And we try to stay away from simplistic one other last announcement is that Giacomo is, as a marketing animal, if I may say,
Sure.
has brought some products here, and you'll all be able to take one home with you after you fill out the evaluation form that's on your desk. So you'll get one of these after you turn that in. It takes about 2 seconds to fill in. So one of the things that strikes me, Giacomo, is that first, there's a couple things, but one of them is, if I have the dates right, 64, your dad set up, 59 came here, 54,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yep.
64 set up the bakery.
Yes.
69 set up a restaurant and pizzeria. Then only a few years after that, after the Business Journal published an article, and you got an award, then you set up your first pizza product that was sold outside of the pizzeria frozen pizza. And then in 1989, 25 years later, your first, what you call your first real innovation takes place. Can you comment on the time it takes to build a business?
Oh, well, yeah, sometimes I look at how long I've been doing this, and I'm thinking, boy, I should be a lot farther ahead. Because for so many years, we just kept our heads down and continued to just work at the business because we had so much runway ahead of us. I mean, when we sold the restaurant actually in '79 and started making frozen pizzas at that time in '79 or 1980, our competitors are billion-dollar companies, and it was actually a bit scary for my father because he was the master of his area as a restaurateur, an Italian immigrant. He knew everything about it, and so he thought, boy, how are you going to make it? You're going to get killed by these companies. And we did. We got our butts kicked. I mean, over and over and over and over again.
When you say butts kicked, meaning what? Meaning
So-
stores wouldn't carry you?
Stores wouldn't carry us. We would go into a grocery store, and you can imagine when you go into the frozen food section or any section of the grocery store, there's 25, 30 linear feet of frozen pizza, right? So the reset means that the retailer is going to put in new items, take out items. And so the firm that ran the resets at that time was Tombstone Pizza. And then it was Kraft when Kraft bought Tombstone. They owned all the shelf space. So the Kraft rep was there. And then Schwann's, a family-owned business, they're about 3.2 billion today. They were a little higher than that many years ago, was the second largest. And then we would get the crumbs. So out of like 40 or 50 feet, and when these companies had 20, 30, 40 different facings of pizzas, different varieties, there would be, so they'd finish the set, and there would be a few feet left, and they would look at the rest of us pizza guys, or little guys, and we were like 4 or 5, and they'd say, okay, well, we got like 6 feet left, so you can get 1, and you can get 2, and we kind of walk away with our heads down. Okay, fine, I'll take the 1, and I mean, it was crushing.
How did you keep it together?
I don't know. I maybe because the mountain was so high, or actually the runway so long, just the determination of, and at that time we didn't have a plan, so the determination of gaining space at these accounts early on, the continuing determination and grit of continuing to persevere and to try, and over time, over a long time, we were able to establish ourselves.
So
Took a while.
Fast forward, give us some numbers as much as you can say in this forum. Where are you today? And then we'll try and go back and fill in some of the gaps.
So sales-wise, today we're close to 700 employees and about 350 million in sales. Back then, in those days, we were probably like 5 million in sales. We've experienced high double-digit growth earlier in the 80s or 90s, where we would grow by, like yesterday's ScaleUp. It was kind of reminding me of our company growing by 5 or 10 or 15 million a year. The idea was grow the sales first. I mean, sales was first. Grow the sales first. And then, I'm not advocating this, and then add infrastructure. But we were just sales mongrels. I mean, it was who can we sell to? How can we sell to? How many can we sell to? How far can we sell to? How much can we sell to? It was just sales, sales, sales.
Why aren't you advocating this? You sound ambivalent.
Because there's some reason. There's seats if you want to sit. Okay, you sure? Okay. Because there is some logic to building your infrastructure to some extent. I think we built our sales first to the neglect of our infrastructure. And then we had a lot of catching up to do. So I would have maybe balanced it a little bit more.
But let's sort of try and put ourselves back in that situation, though. That requires money to build infrastructure and time and investment.
It does require money, time, and investment. It also requires skill and knowledge, something we didn't have. We did not have a really sharp HR person at that time. Tom Smith is our new VP of HR in the audience. But it was a revelation to us. We brought in a gal who was consulting with us for HR, and then she goes, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. We want her to join our company, and she did. That changed everything from an infrastructure standpoint. And all of a sudden, my brother and I are like, oh my gosh, we have all these people here, And my father, when he was alive, he'd look around, he's like, all these people in accounting, what do you know these people in accounting for? So there's a balance to building an infrastructure, but I don't think I would change it. I would balance it more.
So that's an interesting comment, because it's pretty hard to say what I would do differently, because today you have access to resources, you have knowledge.
Yeah.
You can go to a banker and a banker will listen to you.
Yeah.
You can go to equity investors.
Yeah.
They would give you the time of day.
Sure.
But back then, must have been quite different.
It was, early on, we had banking relationships when we had the bakery and the restaurant. So as a kid, I hung around with my dad all the time. And so I knew our banker, I knew our attorney, I knew our insurance guy, I knew every service provider. He had a close group of individuals, and the banker especially. So my father back then, the relation with the banker was phenomenal. He would say, hey, I bought 2 trucks, I need a loan, and okay, Jack, well, you bought the trucks? Yep, I just, okay, fine. It was handshake, and that's how it was. But then in the middle years, and this is where things got a little tricky for us, we had a model that we weren't able to scale, and again, the years were somewhere in the late 80s. We had route trucks that would deliver to the stores throughout the state of Wisconsin. That's how our products were delivered. And so that model proved to be unscalable. Although our trucks in the Milwaukee region were profitable, as we grew outside of the Milwaukee region, those other trucks and territories were unprofitable. And our bank got scared, and actually they called our loan. They called our loan back then. I was like, are you kidding me?
What'd you do?
Well, we fought, because my balance sheet was strong. We never missed. They just got scared. Our balance sheet was strong. Our receivables enough would have covered our note. So it wasn't as for a lack of funds. It's just they weren't sure. They got scared, just like my father did at one point.
Did you ever think of bringing in a private equity investor?
My father always tried to find someone to buy our company, because he realized what he couldn't do. He said, and with tears in his eyes, he's like, I will help you as much as I can. He said, but I can't help you like you need help. So everyone remember Gino's Pizza, Gino Palucci? He actually got a hold of Gino Palucci. He called him on the phone one day. He's in his apron and his smock in the manufacturing plant, and he goes, yep, I just got off the phone with Gino Palucci. I go, how'd you get a hold of him? Well, I got a hold of him. And they're going to come down next week. They want to buy us. They never bought us. Yes, we had several folks that tried to buy the company in the early years. And I was never really for it. But for him, it was a way of gaining peace. Okay, company is sold. I don't have to worry about this generation any longer, because the stress for him was worse than it was for us.
Lot of anxiety.
A lot of anxiety.
Yeah. So I noticed that, and this touches also on ownership. The 4 people on that side of that 16-person chart all have your last name.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about how you grow a company to $350 million with so many Falluccas, and is that going to change? Is it a policy? How do you manage that?
So it is difficult. There's no doubt about it. The good thing that I'm happy about is at least I was older than my brother, and so because I was named the president of the company early on. And
How young were you at that time?
I was probably like 25. So, because he's like, my father's like, well, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. He said, so whatever's mine is yours. So I might as well just make you the president. And, he was old-fashioned Italian immigrant. His whole thing was, he says, do I have to pay tax on that? Yeah, okay, fine. Just give away the stock. I don't want to pay tax. He hated paying taxes. I love paying taxes, by the way. So somebody yesterday said, how do I deal with this tax issue?
That's a great problem to have.
It's a great problem to have. You increase your sales even more, so you'll have even more taxes to pay and more dollars left over.
So speak about governance, management, and growth in the context of this still being a very family-strong company.
So I would say we're family-owned, but we're not really family-run. Lori Fallucca, who is actually my ex-wife, is in the business. That presents a challenge in itself.
She's the creative.
She's the creative, and so moving family members from a position to where they were to a different position takes a lot of time and strategy. My younger brother Angelo recently is moved into a different role in the company, one that suits him better, and so Lori has moved into a different role, one that suits her better as well. And so as I step back and I look at our management team and I look at what we have and where our gaps are, unfortunately, I'm tasked to make those tough decisions, of which take time to handle. So from a governance, my brother Angelo handles all corporate governance. We have a formal board. We don't run like a privately held company, but to some extent we do. Our financials are produced in such a way that we're almost like a publicly traded company. So family owned, but not family run. We have an executive team that really manages the major parts of the business. And so our goal is to kind of work ourselves out of a job. We're involved, and we keep our roles straight. But I can tell you, in a family-run business, my brother Angelo is my direct report. My ex-wife is my direct report. But for the reality is, she's just doing what she wants, and then tells me later, and it's like, okay, fine. There's not going to be this, not like Tom. You're my direct report. It'd be a lot different with you. So,
Don't get any ideas.
Right. It'd be a lot tighter. Okay.
So I invite questions from you all. Okay, Hans.
Related to that.
1 second. We're going to try to get the microphone just for the recording. We can hear you well, but
The mic.
In those roles, Hans Kierkegaard, Imagine Branding. In those roles where you've got people who are reporting about after the fact, how important is the culture and values of the organization defined and implemented and executed on so that you can trust those people to?
Well, so I think it starts with the orientation process and how we bring an employee on, and we talk about our values and we demonstrate our values, and so and we live our values. So our employee base, if I understand the question, is ingrained into what the company values are. But also we're involved, and so when there are tough decisions to make, there are several of us that are involved that rally around and say, okay, what's the best thing that we should do? And sometimes we make a decision, and at the 11th hour, we change the decision or we enhance the decision. So anything that's really important, we're involved from the top on, if that answers your question.
Microphone's closer, so I'll ask
Yeah.
that gentleman in the corner.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Giacomo. Rick Janisic with Pendio. So earlier, without naming names, you mentioned that the bank wanted to call the loan.
Yeah.
They called the loan. Before they called the loan, did they say, we see an issue, we can help you, or were they just...
No, it was the new loan officer pounding his fist. It's like, you got to get your numbers up. You got to get your numbers up. You got to get your numbers up. I don't know if you guys are going to make it. He was actually very good for us because he was belligerent and he was badgering. He didn't understand, which was probably to our benefit. Because if he understood, the more he understood, the easier he would have been. And then, it was less than a year, and they said, gosh, perhaps we overreacted. Yeah, I think you did overreact. We were still with him. And then ever since then, we were with U.S. Bank.
Thank you. One quick follow-up. You talk a lot about your dad. What's the best lesson you got from your dad?
Gosh, he had the gift of hospitality, and that transcends in many ways throughout business and customers. He was direct and very direct. So I say my dad was a guy that had no plan B. Plan A was his plan. And that's what really got us going. He had no plan B. But he was also a ready, shoot, aim kind of a guy too, which was good in some respects. They build the infrastructure first. Sales first, infrastructure later. But we're certainly a product of planning. Yeah.
George Batterson, angel investor and also insurance sales. My question to you would be, thanks for being a great corporate citizen in Milwaukee. We really appreciate everything you've done personally, and your company is a great company here. And my question to you is, why Milwaukee? What makes Milwaukee important to you? And what decision? Why did you stay here? Why did you grow your company here?
Well, first of all, my father started the business here in Milwaukee, so I had some of my relatives in Detroit, and I'm certainly glad. I love Michigan, but I'm certainly glad that we ended up in Milwaukee. I love this city, and I love our state. I really do. And so I'm a cheerleader for the city of Milwaukee. And so if this is my team, as I said yesterday, then I'm going to do the best I can to win in this city. Not only ourselves, but trying to help other companies win in Milwaukee as well. So I want Milwaukee to be on the map. What we're doing with ScaleUp is amazing, and we're getting nationally recognized. So I think we have Milwaukee has just a lot of great things. My youngest son, who's 19, and when I pick him up at the airport, he's out away at college. Almost every time we're driving home from O'Hare, and we're coming over to from the south, coming north, and we'll see the skyline. And he always says, "Boy, I love this city. I love this city." So I do too.
Sometimes it's a bit of a challenge promoting Milwaukee.
I don't see it that. I guess I just don't see it that way. People think about things in Milwaukee that are negative. When we bring customers here, they're blown away. They just are like, "Oh my gosh, what ocean is this that we're sitting in front of?" Our lakefront is beautiful. We've got great restaurants, and I visit a lot of cities, and I love traveling. But Milwaukee's a great place.
Giacomo, just one story. We have, as part of Scale Up Milwaukee, something we call the CEO Forum, which is a forum in which CEOs of companies from about 300 million up to about $1.5 billion participate every quarter in a very open session to explore how they can innovate and grow and utilize entrepreneurial processes within and without their company. And Giacomo is a very active member. Each one of them makes a case presentation that gets discussed, and I remember yours. Sitting around the table, companies such as Harley-Davidson, for example, A.O. Smith, Badger Meter, and here's a pizza company. And making a presentation with a slide deck, and everyone's sort of sitting there shuffling their fingers and tapping their toes until you get to the end of the presentation, which shows a new product, Screamin' Sicilian, that you introduce, and it does approximately $10 or $15 million in the first year, and about $30 million in the second, and about projected to 50 to 60 million in the third year. And that's when they started sitting up and saying, wait a second, I may not think pizza is very sexy, but those numbers are sexy.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about how you made that happen so quickly, how you scaled up, how you developed, innovated a brand new product, got into the market, and generated so much cash.
Well, just like we have a long runway in terms of growth, we also looked at the marketplace to say the market is changing, and we study the market. And the analytics really help us to look at where are the gaps in the marketplace. And Screaming Sicilian, you have a coupon in here. You got a lot of coupons in here. So has anyone tried Screaming Sicilian pizza? So the packaging it's actually a craft-produced product, just like the craft beer industry. A lot of craft beer drinkers in here. So Screaming Sicilian, the package kind of looks like that. So it's a free pizza coupon.
Has its own website. And
Yeah. So back in the day when we started manufacturing frozen pizza, it was all made by hand. Everything was by hand. And so our competitors also today, when they start out, they can get in a room this big and they can start a frozen pizza company. There was a frozen pizza company called Milwaukee Frozen Pizza. I don't remember them. Yeah, they're out of business now, but they start making them by hand. And so I don't care, when you make a pizza by hand, it's always better. It's just always better because there's a lot more care and, typically more toppings. And so we said, well, let's leverage what we know in the pizza industry because we can buy our materials better than any one of these smaller competitors. Because where we used to be as a small made-by-hand company to automation, we looked back and said, we can do this. We know the pizza business. We know the pizza business extremely well. There isn't a topping or variety that we couldn't develop nor procure. And that's how Screaming Sicilian became. It's a craft-produced, locally sourced frozen pizza. And it resonated. We decided also that while Palermo stood for quality for many, many years, it became a mainstream brand. So for those of you who are food snobs or perhaps savvy shoppers, you may be gravitating from your national brand favorites of products, whether it's beverage or bread or desserts or dinners or whatever it might be. You're gravitating towards a more locally produced, cleaner label. And that's what Screaming Sicilian was all about. And so the product hit right away, and consumers gravitated towards a brand that was not part of a national brand. Even though we are part of a national brand, we put the same care into the products, how we source it, and how we market it. And so,
You make it sound easy, but hitting right off the bat a product in 3 years is putting, let's say, $50-60 million on
Yeah.
the top line.
Yeah.
Did you make mistakes along the way? Did you have false starts? And we're just seeing the last 3 years of a 30-year process?
No, so there have been no mistakes with Screaming Sicilian, really just challenges, companies wanting to, the hardest thing that we fight today is retailers wanting to price it lower than we want. And that's the challenge. The pizza business is very, very competitive. So the pizza has an $8.99 retail, and we have seen that pizza on sale for as low as $5.99, which just drives us crazy because they'll margin down to try to get consumers in. They want to use Screaming Sicilian as a feature. So that's the big challenge with Screaming.
So you also have a lot of business in private label.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that. You won an award for
Oh,
one of your big customers.
Oh yes, for many years in a row. So the way we decided to grow our business back in the 80s, we just said we're not going to be able to scale this company by adding route trucks in a hub and spoke model. We just weren't going to be able to. So we decided to go after the larger retailers across the country where we would produce their pizza. And so they saw in us something different. And our competitors on the private label side typically were owned by private equity. So they weren't as nimble. They were in for a shorter duration. They didn't have that personal touch like we did. We had a long tradition. We were pizza people, so they trusted us to make their pizza, like Wegmans out of New York and Safeway and Kroger and Meijer, Roundy's. We make all their private label. Because we brought innovation, trust, they saw that we would be able to really make them a quality product in whatever category. So that's how we grew our business in private label. And our private label business at one point was like 70, 80% of our sales versus our brand, which is 20. So it helped our company scale. Yes.
Elizabeth Thielen, is this working? Yeah. Okay. Elizabeth Thielen, the Water Council. I just have a question about growth, and my philosophy is that watching companies grow, the leader always has to let go to grow. Oh, yeah. Can you talk about different points as you were growing that you struggled with to let some of that leadership and decision making?
Oh, no doubt. So if I didn't let grow, we would not be growing. I mean, I guess it's part of it is I like my life. I don't want to be married to my business 7 days a week doing everything. I take no pride in that. So as a young kid, I mean, I had very long hours. I worked a lot. I mean, I missed most of my high school years. And so I was ready to let go. I was ready to let go as we added senior execs into the business. And so because we decided we're going to hire the best, the brightest, the best that we could find, pay them competitively, and then let them do their jobs. And so at times it was hard letting go, of course, but I think I love delegating. I do love delegating, and I love to have people floor.
Why do you love delegating?
Because it gives me more time to do what I want, you know? So I basically like to push on the revenue side, push on the income side. I'm sort of an inspirational leader, but I'm like, I'm not a dictator, but I kind of, here's what I want, and then I'll go off and do something else.
So that means that sometimes people are going to be doing things that you don't want them to, making mistakes or...
Potentially,
what
sure.
happens? Do they know you're going to get angry?
The reality is a lot of people are sometimes afraid, well, I didn't want to make that mistake. I said, well, when's the last time anyone was fired for making a mistake or got their head chopped off for it? So in that regard, there haven't been large mistakes. I'm fairly connected. And, you know, if we're going to make a change, typically there's a process. Giacomo, we're thinking about, you know, especially if the biggest change is when we're moving to different suppliers that I've had a relationship with early on. That's the hard part. You know, Giacomo, we need to make a change here, and here are the reasons why. You know, there's service, there's value, there's this and that. Okay, well, everything is fair in love and war. I have to earn my business with all the customers that I have. I don't rely on friendships, although I have friendships. So that's a hard part.
Do you get involved at all with smaller companies as an informal or formal advisor?
I try not to anymore. Suppliers, but other, I mean, small companies that are not affiliated or related to me, absolutely. I love getting involved.
So what are some of the lessons?
I hope I answered your question.
You know, let's talk a little bit about, let's say, the $5 million companies, of which
Yeah.
there are hundreds, if not thousands, in Wisconsin, and they're the ones that are going to be the future. You know,
Yeah.
One out of 100 will become the future Palermo's Pizza, but they'll be hiring and they'll
Sure.
be creating prosperity and paying lots of taxes.
Yes.
So, what is your advice to them? Realistic advice. Not advice as if you, with all your resources, had a $5 million company, but they, with their resources and knowledge, have their $5 million company. How can they lay the groundwork realistically to be big?
So, I mean, nothing substitutes hard work. So I guess that's the first piece of advice. I mean, the second, I would say, don't always seek. I was watching Shark Tank last night. I stay up late and I watch Shark Tank and The Profit, all those shows. And this one company was saying how they had secured a $500,000 infusion of cash into their company. And that helped establish the value of the company, which is just crap, excuse my language, but that doesn't establish the value of your company. Receiving $500,000 of infused capital does nothing for you if you can't return that money. So be careful in terms of relying on outside investors. We chose not to. We had no outside investors.
You had customers.
We had customers. And and cash was king. So going after the sales was always the best. That's my best piece of advice.
But the flip side of that is the sleepless nights, the anxiety, the
Sure.
uncertainty.
Sure, all of
Saying
it.
that's the kitchen, and if you don't like can't stand
Right.
the heat.
Exactly. I mean, we were, my father had a survival mentality. So in the restaurant business, and this is another lesson I learned, growing up, we did everything. I mean, so we in terms of our food preparation. So the more we did, the more we saved, the more that we didn't have to rely on outside folks. Today, it's quite the opposite. We have more consultants and outside people that manage so much. It's quite a difference in how I grew up. But early on, you got to kind of not think small, but you got to live within your means. So many companies, they get ahead of themselves in terms of investors or infrastructure. But if you have a plan, that's the best thing you can do. If you've got a plan, that to me is the best thing you can do. Because now you know financially where your milestones are, in terms of product and people, and then you know you're on track.
Sounds like if you would prioritize the sources of cash, you'd say customer first, banker,
Yes.
and then shareholder,
Sure.
investor,
Yes.
for all the reasons. Yes.
If I could put a quick plug in for Pimo's Pizza.
Sure. Oh, gosh.
Just had some at Sendix this weekend. They did a very, very good. You mentioned, excellent. You mentioned analytics. I usually wouldn't think of analytics and pizza, but can you spend a couple of minutes on that? And as a follow-up, when you take a look out for the next couple of years, what do you think is the most critical thing that you need to be working on right now that's going to be a barrier to future success?
So analytics, we subscribe to syndicated data called AC Nielsen. So in the marketplace, it's our report card. It shows which brands are selling in which accounts, and we get monthly figures. So we know 4 weeks, 12 weeks, 52 weeks. So we can tell going through the pages, and we dive through those numbers to see how are we doing against our competitors, how are our competitors doing, who's up, who's down, how is the market doing. So for example, the last 4 to 12 weeks, the market's been flat. But we're up 33%, although we're still below our forecasted sales. So even though we're up 33%, we're not happy because we're below our forecast. And our VP of sales is getting his butt kicked now because it's like, okay, how are we going to overcome this? I mean, it's not acceptable to be down off a plan. So the analytics, that's one example, but it gives us who's selling, who's not, where is our opportunity, who's declining. That's one great way. Internally analytics, get the best CFO you can or controller. The numbers, know the numbers. I mean, when we had a board, I remember early on our board, one of the board members said to me, and he said, you don't know your numbers well enough. You don't know your numbers. You need to focus on your numbers better. And I did. I mean, I'm a college dropout, but I really know how to read a income statement, balance sheet, and look at the numbers. But the folks that we have in our accounting department are whizzes. They're phenomenal.
You mentioned a term that I think maybe we can end with, and that is your board. Talk a little bit about the role of a board of directors, who's on there. And one of the things that strikes me is that of the $3, $4, $5 million companies, it's the rare company that has a board of directors, other than a nominal board.
Sure. So we were talking this morning, Mr. Dukas, Michael, right? Yes. About the Bible. And the Bible talks, a lot to learn in the Bible about accountability. And so I remember meeting with men going through Bible study, saying accountability is your friend. Getting a board in a company, a friend of mine who I would meet with, and I would meet with lots of folks, lunch, breakfast, just to pick their brain about lots of things. And he said, you need to have a board of directors. What are you doing? How can you try to scale your company without a board? And so I got a board. What the board did is it changed our company completely around. Because the board said, okay, what's your plan? We don't have a plan. I said, sell more pizzas. That's our plan. Well, no, we need a plan. How big do you want to be? All the things that a company needs to figure out, They wanted us to know. They wanted all the answers. I'm thinking, no, I hired you for the answers. No, you have to provide the answers. We'll govern and we will advise based upon your plan. Oh, great, okay. So, but that changed us, that changed our company completely.
Sounds like they're more like fitness trainers.
Exactly.
So how did you choose? Can you give some examples of who some of the people are?
So, U.S. Bank was our bank. Walter Winding, I'm not sure if anyone, he's on many boards. He was our first board member and helped us to secure the other board members. Woody Adkins, another legend in the food business, great board member, knows food. Walter knows banking, governance, and the people side of the business. And so those were our two first board members. Plus, we had a consultant in Chicago that we had worked with for many, many years. And he was just great psychologically in terms of leadership and team building. So those were our first three board members. And so the guy from Chicago dropped off and we brought someone else on. So we only have three outside board members.
But they're active in
They're
the
active.
advisory role.
Well, yes, because what happens is that we provide board reports. And so what does that mean? That means that we have to look into our business and look at what's going on and be able to provide a report that they're going to read. So they governed even on the outside. We would meet with our board quarterly, plus we would meet in between board meetings. So we have a culture of learning and being teachable. And I suppose that comes from my father, who is a uneducated, sixth grade education person, and I'm a college dropout, so I figured, I need people that are smarter than me, so I was willing to learn, and they were willing to teach. Well, that's right, yeah, exactly.
Well, I have to ask this because
Yeah.
in Silicon Valley, there are very famous and wealthy, successful entrepreneurs who are saying college is useless, drop out of college, and go be an entrepreneur. College won't help you. Where do you come down on that?
Oh, to me, it's what you do. I mean, so when my boys went to college, my youngest he's just actually driving home today. I wanted to go back because I think about all the things to learn. I wasn't a very well-rounded individual. I mean, it's just amazing what I don't know about other parts of the world. But I was focused. I was very singularly focused. College, of course, will broaden you. So I'm not, you guys know that more than me. But I love to learn. So going back, and especially my youngest son goes to High Point University, North Carolina. Nito Cubine, you guys remember that? You know Nito?
Well, you mentioned his name.
Oh my, my son's a bromance with him. He's the college president. But I love what he teaches because he teaches common sense plus academia. So you need both.
Giacomo Fallucca, thank you very much for
You're
spending
welcome.
time with us.
Thanks. Thank you.
Remember, there's a piece of paper on your chair. Please fill it out. And then once you give Elizabeth your evaluation form, you will get a takeaway.
Thank you. Thank you.